So far, got confirmation that Seminole County schools as well as Orange County schools are planning tomorrow to have school as a normal day. The thinking is that by daybreak, Garrett, this hurricane makes its way into Georgia, and we'll see conditions here rapidly improving. It's just a matter of cleanup in the yard if big limbs fall down or if a tree falls down. So we're going to be on the edge of this thing, but I'll tell you what, it's going to be more than just cleanup here in the Panhandle. They will be looking at extended power outages that could range for more than 2 weeks.
Brooks, thank you. And as Brooks mentioned there, kids in Orange, Seminole, and we've also learned Volusia counties are going to be back in class tomorrow. All 3 of those school districts announced they plan to return to normal operations. Osceola County will be closed for a pre-scheduled student holiday. We will continue to update you as we learn from more school districts about their plans for the rest of the week. And our live team coverage continues now with Fox 35's Marley Capper. She is joining us live from Lake County. And Marley, what's it look like out there?
Garrett, good afternoon. I almost said good morning. We've been out here all day, but it's looking pretty good out so far. It's been pretty hot. It was sunny just a few moments ago. There's still some cloud coverage, a little windy, but we're here at a location where they're doing some preventative tree pruning ahead of the hurricane. So when I step out, you can see all of the is not from winds. This is because they're pruning the tree. Now, this is a really important thing, and I think it's a common misconception that like there's no way to prepare the trees. That's just not the truth. So, McCullough Arboriculture. So this is Nolan. Okay, Nolan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Okay, and were you up in the tree earlier today?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. Okay, so he's been really great about helping make sure that everything's clear before they're dropping the tree limbs. So why don't you tell me what forest? He's in the purple shirt there. We were talking to him earlier this morning. What is he doing right now?
So what he's doing is going out to the ends of each of these branches and making a reduction cut, which he's going out, taking like a 2-inch or like a 1-inch piece next to a 1/2-inch piece and retaining that 1/2-inch piece so they can keep on growing. But you're taking the larger piece and taking that weight off at the end of it.
So tell me why this is important. You know, sometimes people say like, oh, just cut the middles of your tree so the wind can go through. But we've learned today that that is also another common misconception. So what's the importance of keeping your trees up to date and pruning them properly?
So with properly pruning them, you're taking that weight off the end and you're taking the leverage out of it. And basically what you're doing is taking all that weight from the back and lightening it up. So it's not going to fail way back here. You don't have that whole limb falling off. And it can take and basically just pulling all that weight off the end is what you're doing.
Yeah, so kind of just like shaving some of the leaves off, if you will. And if high winds were to come through and, you know, knock the tree over, there's a lesser chance because it's lighter. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So you're less likely for the whole tree to like come apart. Like you have a big branch fall off. It makes it to where you're putting all that pressure back into the tree, back into the center, instead of being all out on the ends.
Definitely. Gotcha. Well, very fascinating stuff. Nolan, thank you so much for talking with us. Make sure that you guys are paying attention to your trees. You might hear cracking noises. There was an emergency management services meeting up in Tallahassee with the governor, and one of the gentlemen said it sounds like fireworks popping or gunshots sometimes. He says if you hear that, treat it as if it's a tornado and go to cover, go to a bathroom or a closet that's really secure to make sure that you are not in line of the tree that could potentially fall down on your house. And then if it does happen and something does fall, make sure that you're calling a proper licensed person to come, an arborist to come and clean up the trees, because it can cause a lot of damage to your home and you want to make sure it's handled properly. But we're learning lots of great things here today about how to be preventative for the next time, and then what you need to do when a hurricane, if it does, you know, bring up trees. That's a big concern for Seminole County with strong winds and a lot of saturation in the ground with the water. You know, that's really common for the trees to be pulled up. So this is really good stuff. So I appreciate them for letting us be here. And Garrett will send things back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you to Marley Capper and our Fox 35 Orlando team. They were giving some really good tips there. And we did want to just give you another live look again, tracking Hurricane Helene. We did just get some information into our Fox weather newsroom here. Hurricane Helene is continuing to strengthen as it is heading towards Florida, but it is now on track to make landfall in Florida's Big Bend area around 11 p.m. now Eastern time is what Fox Weather is telling us. And this storm's massive size, we've been talking about this a lot today, and the intensity, it's going to lead to devastating impacts for Florida and southern Georgia. It's expected to cause widespread, what they're saying, unsurvivable storm surge, flooding, destruction. That storm surge can be up to 20 feet. So we are going to continue to monitor this here. We do have some live interviews that we do have coming up here on Live Now from Fox. But right now, we do have to step away for our first 2-minute break of the hour. We'll be right back with more live continuous coverage. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox as we continue our coverage of Hurricane Helene. We are going to give you a look right now at some video from Zoo Tampa that they sent us. Now, if you were watching yesterday here on Live Now from Fox, we spoke to the Florida Aquarium and how they were protecting their marine life ahead of the storm. But what about those animals on land? Zoo Tampa is closed to guests today ahead of the storm, and they have put a weather preparedness plan in place to make sure the animals and staff will be safe. In these coming hours, as you can see in this video that we're playing for you, they will be focused on moving larger animals into their night houses, and an animal care storm ride-out team will be on site tonight with those animals. So we do want to bring in Senior VP Chief Zoological Officer Chris Massaro onto the show to tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing in this video. Chris, thank you so much for being here. And as we were just watching, it looks like this is really an all-hands-on-deck effort. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing leading up to the storm, but also we're in the final hours now. So what are you going to prepare?
Yeah, sure. So, with a big storm like this, the benefit of, I guess, if there's a benefit to a hurricane, that is that you have some warning that it's coming. So it gives us time to plan. We've got plans already in place, so we know how to respond to certain levels of severe weather, whether it's tropical storm to all the different categories of a hurricane. There's different ways we'll respond to it. But the biggest thing is always pre-storm prep, which is making sure any loose debris around the park is put up and put away. We want to make sure that's away. We have quite a bit of construction projects going on in the park right now. So
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. As I was just showing you these live images into our newsroom before the break, we do have another one that has come up, and this is actually breaking. The Associated Press reporting that this Skyway Bridge over Tampa Bay has closed as wind gusts have reached 60 miles per hour. That's according to Highway Patrol. Again, this is Tampa Bay, and that Skyway Bridge that you are taking a look at, it looks like it may even be frozen, that camera. That has closed due to wind gusts reaching over 60 miles per hour. So again, another live look into our newsroom. And I was showing this one also just a minute ago. This is in St. Petersburg, Florida. You can see that camera shaking as we are approaching this making landfall in just a matter of hours at this point. Hurricane Helene is continuing to intensify, and it is forecast to become a Category 3 hurricane, as again, it is heading towards Florida. But again, we keep talking about Florida. This is going to have widespread impacts to other states as well north of Florida. As we know, some of them under states of emergency, such as Virginia. And we are going to be talking to some reporters a little bit later who are in those other states besides Florida about what they are seeing right now as we continue to await this. Again, the story here being the massive size and intensity that is going to leave devastating impacts in mostly the Sunshine State, Florida, and southern Georgia. As we await more live briefings on the latest as well as live interviews, we are going to turn back to Fox 35 Orlando as they have been in coverage. Let's head over there and listen in.
Missed downpours, but still heavy rain and blinding rains in those downpours. Totals in the 1 to 4 inch range. Wind gusts possibly between 45 and 60 miles per hour. Still storm force, just not as strong as what they will be for our northwestern communities, with the worst weather between 5 p.m. and 3 a.m. Brooke. So it's certainly going to be, thankfully it's quick moving, but still we have a long ways to go before the impacts are done.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to be this evening that you start to really notice it. By then in the red, that's the hurricane force wind lapping up against Tampa Bay. We'll be hearing the tropical storm force winds for much of the night, but then the big hurricane impacts impact the Big Bend, Tallahassee, Levy-Dixie, Taylor counties, and Gilchrist County. A 400-mile wide wingspan. This is a developing situation. Latest information is streaming into the Fox 35 Weather Center right now. Stay with us as our continuing coverage commences after this break. New information and also an update as far as where exactly it landfalls and what exactly you can expect where you live.
All right, looks like they did just go to break, but our Tampa team also did just go to break there as well. So we are going to jump away for a quick 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. When we come back, more coverage. Welcome back. Let's take a live look at our XRAD radar as we are going to continue the latest on here. What we do know as Helene is heading towards Florida, you can just see it moving up there. It's getting very, very close again, hours away. We are anticipating landfall around 11 p.m. Eastern time. This fast-moving hurricane is advancing across the Gulf of Mexico towards the Sunshine State. It's threatening an unsurvivable storm surge in northwestern parts of the state, as well as damaging winds, rains, and flash flooding hundreds of miles inland across much of the southeastern United States. Here's what we know from the latest here, some bullet points. The storm strength, Helene, was upgraded Thursday to a Category 2 storm, and it is expected to become a major hurricane. So what that means is that would become a Category 3 or higher when it does make landfall tonight. Helene is the 8th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, which did begin on June 1st. And NOAA has predicted an above average Atlantic hurricane season this year because of record warm ocean temperatures. In terms of evacuation orders, counties along Florida's west and northwestern coasts have issued evacuation orders, with officials advising other residents to stock up on food, water, and fuel. So again, this is just a live look at our XRAD radar. If you are just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we have been continuing this all morning. Storm surge in northwestern Florida. As officials warned on Thursday, they're urging residents to heed those evacuators if you have not done so already ahead of this Category 2 storm. Again, expected to cause significant damage hundreds of miles inland across much of the southeastern United States. It was upgraded this morning to Category 2, but as we just said, it is expected to become a major hurricane, which means Category 3 or higher when it does make landfall tonight. The tropical storm force winds already started hitting the state, Florida, in advance. Hurricane warnings and flash flood warnings are extending from the coast up into south central Georgia. So again, while we do talk about Florida and the impacts this is going to have on Florida, we are also talking about Georgia and these other states that are under states of emergency. So again, this is not just localized to Florida. This is going to have a widespread impact. However, the governors of Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia have all declared emergencies in their states, as did President Joe Biden for several of the states. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis said this morning that models suggest Helene will make landfall further east, lessening the chances of a direct hit on the capital city of Tallahassee, whose metro area has a population of around 395,000. So we did want to also just pivot back really quickly. Fox 35 Orlando team as they are in coverage.
Garner and Brooks, the National Hurricane Center just upgraded Helene now to a Category 3 hurricane.
Yes, U.S. Air Force hurricane hunters, Garrett, flying into the storm found winds of 120 miles per hour and a rare intermediate advisory outside of the standard 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. update periods. They've declared this as a major hurricane, and that's important. With this data, they can then interpolate to decide, you know what, the impacts are going to be a little bit more extreme than they otherwise would be. Now, in this case, winds of 125 or 120 miles per hour firmly puts into the Cat 3 category. That category begins at 111 miles per hour. It's been experiencing a rapid intensification process from this morning to now its maturity as a Cat 3. It may even reach Cat 4 before landfall occurs around midnight tonight. The landfall timing has been delayed just a little bit, but it's still on track to impact Apalachee Bay. We're talking from Alligator Point near Apalachicola all the way east potentially to Taylor County around St. Perry. But right in the middle of the cone is the city of Tallahassee, Florida's capital city, that has yet to experience in its over 200-year history a direct landfall from a major hurricane. So tonight will be a very difficult night for folks there on the Panhandle, with the trees falling, the power outages, possible damage to structures, and of course life and limb. This is a big deal. But don't focus on just the cone for impacts here in Florida. This is a very large system with a wind span east of the center that extends more than 400 miles. And so as we see new bands developing as soon as 3:30, about an hour from now, we'll start to see the wind picking up, and we'll start to see our tornado threat picking up. We have been looking at the latest models, and it does look like we've got a pretty high tornado threat between roughly 3:30 and about 7 p.m. So stay tuned for warnings. Stay with Fox 35. And as we start getting into these bands of rain between about 8 and 10 o'clock, we could see wind gusts easily exceeding 60 miles per hour or more. And that will be the full force of Helene as far as we're concerned with here in Central Florida. But there could be power outages as a result of limbs falling and trees falling. But most of the action, of course, as you get closer to the system. In this band, which extends from roughly Gainesville, Ocala Villages to Spring Hill, we could see hurricane-force wind gusts up and down and west of I-75 with the full force of Helene impacting the Big Bend from Levy County to Dixie County to Taylor County with wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. Garrett, we are tracking the latest. We've got TJ Springer in the house, Noah Berggren also here. We're going to continue our team coverage and bring you the latest. This information streaming in right now in real time. And we're going to update the maps, show you the latest impacts. This is an important update here. Now that it's a major hurricane, we can look ahead to landfall and make assumptions at this point about what could happen. And I'll tell you this, it is going to be a once, if you look at the history of Tallahassee, a once in a lifetime kind of thing with this storm heading that way. Folks in Tallahassee have never experienced anything like this. If they've been there and you know, they've lived there for their entire lives, this is a first for this region. So folks hunkering down now and take this storm seriously if they're not already.
Yeah, and still rapidly strengthening.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah, we could see this thing go up to 140 miles an hour before landfall.
All right, Brooks, thanks. Well, our live team coverage continues now up in the Villages. Fox 30.
All right. Thank you to our Fox 35 Orlando team for that coverage. We also did just want to pop up this look here at this storm, the eye of the storm, this footage that was taken as Hurricane Helene is gaining strength and setting its sights on Florida's Big Bend region. Now, again, we've been talking about Florida. Nearly all of Florida is under a weather alert, and warnings are extending hundreds of miles into Georgia and the Carolinas. So for that, we did want to bring in Fox News' Oliviana Calmes in the southern Georgia, and she's in Valdosta right now. Oliviana, I know you have been on the ground there. Can you tell us the latest on what you're seeing?
Good afternoon, Christy. Yeah, it is calm here right now. It was pouring last night, but it's calm right now, and that's why there's still some people out on the roads. Most of the businesses are all closed right now as people prepare and brace for the worst in this storm. We're under a hurricane watch right now, and a lot of folks, while there are, a lot of them on the road, a lot of people have already evacuated this area.
It's so large that I don't know. And they're saying it's worse than Idalia. And when I heard that, I was like, Idalia was pretty rough. So I don't want to. We had a lot of trees down and a lot of water in our house with Idalia. So I'm like, I don't want to stay with my baby.
They're still saying they're picking up the pieces from past storms like Idalia. And one guy I talked to today said the wind, which we expect could be up to 100 miles per hour, even all the way up into Georgia. This is southern Georgia now, is going to just really destroy the city if there are those heavy of winds, because there's a lot of trees in this area. And there's some folks here already without power because of the storm. Of course, we'll be watching that, but there's also a tornado watch here until 10 p.m. as well. I'll send it back to you, Christy.
Oliviana, really quickly, what have you been seeing? I know you just talked about it a little bit, but have you seen people maybe running to the store for last minute items? What have you been hearing from people that are still there?
Yeah, in the last day, I've talked to some people outside the grocery store, and I've talked to some people that are getting sandbags that were provided free from the city, which is always an amazing resource. Other people outside the grocery store tell me that there is no more bottled water left in a lot of the stores. But there are some people that aren't hunkering down as much. There's even some people I saw in a pool nearby, kind of making sure they're doing that before the worst of it comes. But for the most part, people are really bracing for the worst here.
And last question for you. Have you seen any officials out? Have you talked to any officials just about in that region in Georgia, what they're doing to prepare for this?
Well, earlier you said that most of Florida is under these tropical storm warnings and this hurricane warning. That extending up into Georgia. Officials here are taking it really seriously. And Valdosta, where I am, has been hit hard, like that woman said, with Idalia and everything. So officials and just regular people going about their days are really all taking this seriously.
Olivia Nacomi is our Fox News multimedia reporter. I really appreciate you jumping on here to chat with us.
Of course.
Stay safe out there. Stay dry. All right. We did also want to give a live look at this new camera that we just got into our newsroom. A live look. This is in Pinellas County. And again, we show you these images just to show you how it is really starting to pick up. A little bit earlier in the day, these images, the cameras may have been just a little bit calmer. Breaking, my producer is just showing me here. Helene is now officially a Category 3 storm. They just told me that, Category 3 storm. So that means that this is now a major hurricane, as it does not show any signs of slowing here. It is picking up force, and it, again, now a Category 3 storm. So let's turn back to our Fox 35 Orlando team, as maybe they are covering this breaking news. Let's listen into what they're saying.
What have you done in the past 24 hours to keep the property safe?
Actually, just doing hourly patrols, just making sure everything's secured, making sure everybody's safe. We don't really have a lot of folks here right now, so just staying in touch with them, making sure they have everything they need.
Yeah. What's that building right there?
This one here, that's actually a private residence.
It is.
Yeah, everything here is ours except that one there.
So how high will the water get on his property, you think?
I've only been here a few months at this location, so I really don't know how high it's went up on that building, honestly.
But he's right on it for sure.
He's a little bit closer than we are, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to come back tomorrow and see as well. Evacuated all your guests. I know they had to probably leave, and that was probably tough to tell them, but
yeah, it
safety
was.
first.
But they're pretty smart people around here. They're like, hey, we hear you.
Yeah.
Paradise comes with its price sometimes, so it's a blessing now, but it can also be a curse. So
look at that water. That will recede a little bit this afternoon, but it's going to come right back.
It's going to come back later in the afternoon, and they're calling for unreal numbers we've never seen. So who knows? We're hoping for the best.
Well, we enjoyed our stay here last night, of course. It was no problems for us, but we're going to move a bit further inland. We have to preserve things like power and vehicles. We don't want to get underwater with our cars. In fact, you moved your personal car 20 miles inland.
Yeah, I want to be safe.
Yeah, smart move.
Yeah, we did. So
yeah, you've got other media outlets staying here at the Paddle Tail, Fox organization. You're down and weather the storm. We're going to take a more conservative approach inland, but we wish you the best of luck in the next 12 hours.
Appreciate it. We appreciate having you guys here and appreciate all you do.
Yeah, thank you for your time today, and good luck. Stay safe. All right, we're going to send it back to you all in the studio.
An update now from Florida State University. Students staying in the residence halls were moved to the conference center.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, giving you another live look here out of St. Petersburg. This is not St. Petersburg. This is Pinellas County, Florida, with this breaking news that Helene is now a Category 3 hurricane with winds up to 120 miles per hour as it continues on a path that will bring the monster storm into Florida's Big Bend tonight. We did want to bring in Mike Boylan. He is a storm tracker. He has a popular following, Mike's weather page, and he has been so kind to come on the show and tell us a little bit about what he's been seeing. Mike, thank you so much for being here. First of all, tell us exactly where you are, what you've been doing today, and what you've seen.
I'm in Tallahassee. I drove down to the water here, a place called St. Mark's. This area I'm in is supposed to have 15 to 20 foot of surge. So just kind of wanted to take a little ride down here. But I've been talking to locals. A lot of law enforcement by the state capitol came by to talk to me. And there's a weird sense in the air, like no one really knows what's gonna happen. The track is shifting a little, east, a little west. They're still in the cone. We talked about Hurricane Hermine back in 2016, and they had a lot of power outages, and that was just a Cat 1. So a lot of unknowns are going to be, figured out here in just a few short hours. That's for sure.
I do want to talk really quickly about what this means. Major hurricane, Category 3. What does that mean now? And do we potentially see that this can strengthen to an even Category 4 before landfall?
Definitely. The higher intensity models have been predicting that possibility. The National Hurricane Center discussed that at 11, that we could see this possibly Cat 4. Once these hurricanes develop that inner eye, and it's over that warm loop current of the Gulf of Mexico, things can happen quick. So yes, it's probably going to either peak or continue strengthening. Most every model showed this system to continue strengthening. And what that does, in my experience with the strengthening system at landfall, it continues that before it starts to weaken. And that's why we're seeing hurricane winds deep into Georgia. And we have Atlanta with a tropical storm warning. I mean, that's just, you don't see tropical storm warnings all the way to the Tennessee line. So this thing is not going to, slow down. That's going to be one of the big stories, I really believe, is the trees, which equates to power outages. And the rain, that they increased our high flood risk map in pink. It's a rare alert for the flooding, and it's from the Gulf to the mountains. So these are effects, and of course the major hurricane brings the winds and the surge, so we got to worry about landfall winds more than anything. And they're talking about, hurricane winds 60 miles from center. So that's pretty good distance to feel these winds.
When we talk about Category 3, I guess, what are some of the ingredients that go into making that, right? Is it a certain wind speed that this storm has to hit to become a Category 3? What are some of the factors that make it that strength?
They use wind speed. So 115 is when we start to get into major hurricanes. A lot of the pressure, a lot of folks use pressure, lower the pressures, usually the bigger the winds. It takes time for winds to catch up, and that's what we're seeing now. It had the low pressure, now the winds catch up. But the ingredients that are making this thing work is basically the warm Gulf water. We don't have a lot of upper level wind shear, which usually helps disrupt the system, and climatology. Any system in the Gulf of Mexico this time of year typically is one you need to watch. And the only thing that's different with this system is we're used to these hooking off to the east a little bit because we usually have a cold front coming down in the steering currents. This one's actually it's going to go northwest, which is not common, and that's leaving this little bit of uncertainty on which way it's going to, who's going to get the actual eye wall, because it's reacting to some weird steering currents we normally don't see.
I do want to also mention something that I saw you put out on your social media yesterday. You said you were in Tallahassee having a beer, and you said something that the people here aren't really. What did you say? You said that they're not sure what's coming, is what you said.
Yeah, and I take a lot of heat for that. I do apologize to my Tallahassee friends, but this is even in my area. We get like a hurricane hangover. I see it every year. Once we get to October, people turn focus to football. It's fall. We got leaves changing. it's like we have all this preseason hype in April and May, and we do expos and all these, and then when it comes to this time of year, it just feels like people just are done with hurricane season, and that's kind of the feeling that I get everywhere I go. Is some are like know about it, and some are like, what are you talking about? So it wasn't a generalization of the whole town, but it's a real phenomenon this time of season. People are done with hurricanes. They don't want to talk about them anymore. And then we get these big ones that people forget. October, I was thinking about it. I saw at a restaurant on the way down here, they had Halloween stuff up, and you got Christmas stuff in the stores, and then we're dealing with hurricanes. So it's still mentally weird that we're dealing with this when it's almost, the holiday season.
Yeah. And no, I was not coming after you for that post. I just really genuinely wanted to know, what are people saying? And I guess as you were driving around today, you talked a little bit about what you were seeing, but are there people still trying to get out to the store or people trying to leave?
Oh yeah, it's a last second panic for some folks. That we see a lot of storms come, and we tend to get kind of stubborn. I do. A lot of my friends do, and then they wait, and then it's like, oh boy, it's coming. And talking to the local Capitol Police guys, a lot of people that live here had never been through a storm like this. So there's all these unknowns of the severity that they could see with trees. The town is full of trees. It's a very beautiful city. There's a lot of hills. One thing that I'm experienced in the past elevations are going to see the bigger winds. So part of the city has these big, and they're going to experience even stronger winds the higher up you are. So we're going to see the effects. I mean, it's we got tornado warnings today. It's a hard system to communicate when everybody focuses on this center line, but much effects to the east and to the north, and that's something that I wish we could just educate more. Is we look at that center line and we're like, that's where the storm's at, but the effects are 400 miles wide, and a lot it's hard to see that until it happens. And I always hear stories afterwards like, I didn't know that was coming. And that's kind of what I try to do with the messaging, at least. Put the word out. Sometimes people think I'm hyping, but I've been through enough of these now to know we're probably going to see, a lot of power outages and a lot of trees down and a lot of roofs and stuff you don't want to see. But it's what happens with major hurricanes. You can't you can't bury your head in the sand. They're parts of life, and we're going to have them again. You can't stop them.
No, you can't. And Mike, I'm curious, it's storm chasing. I want to hear more about this. So what is your plan today? Are you just planning to drive all over? Is there a certain area you're going to stick to? What's your plan, and how do you determine your plan?
Well, yeah, it's evolved over the years. I have a lot of folks that I'm partners with that are here preparing for the post-storm recovery. And I'm also a lot of friends with the state capitol with FDEM. And so I'm kind of like on the scene in a way, helping them a little bit and showing the damage and, where it's bad. And what I usually try to do is cover what nobody else is covering, and that might be little towns, little, areas that might not be in the mainstream media. So, I took a ride out here to this little town at St. Mark's, beautiful little beach, town, or not really a beach town. We have beaches in Clearwater, little restaurant town. There's seafood everywhere. And I love these little towns. I love the downtowns of these, the looks of these towns. And it's just heartbreaking to think that they're going to have 15, 20 foot of surge. So I just try to bring the messaging. I guess that's my number one goal is I like to educate myself, see it. So when I, talk about these storms, I can be on more of an intimate level with people and say, I've seen it. This is what we're going to see. And then, show it afterwards and hopefully, keep everybody educated for the next one.
Mike, my last question for you, as you have covered a lot of these storms, Helene, what can the impact be? Is this really going to be as detrimental as we have been hearing?
Well, if it heads straight to Tallahassee, yes. The east side of the storm has got the bigger winds. If this thing goes to the east, that Tallahassee will have less of the big winds, but that moves on to another town. And I guess the big story is there's little towns that have dealt with Idalia and could be dealing with their third hurricane in 2 years, and that's not something that we see a lot. So, I feel terrible for those folks. You know, they get forgotten a lot, and they're still recovering. But a major hurricane brings those winds, and it brings down, you know, trees, and it brings, you know, we have roof damage. You have, you know, power lines are going to snap. I was covering Beryl, and I showed people the power of a Category 1 just a few months ago. That was the storm that Houston was out of power for, you know, weeks, 2 million people. And that was just a Category 1. And we saw, you know, power lines down, trees that are 2-3 foot wide snap in half. I mean, so Category 3 winds are no joke. And this area has got a lot of trees. So I don't want to predict we're going to see a lot of, you know, catastrophic damage, but history says we will. And the surge is the other side of it. There's a lot of beautiful little towns along the Gulf Coast that were affected with Idalia, but this surge, we're talking 20 foot. And if this thing keeps getting stronger, you know, 20 foot's a real reality. And that's, so yeah, it's going to be terrible. Trust me. We're already seeing surge like you just showed in my hometown of Tampa Bay, and they've never experienced 8-foot storm surge in Tampa Bay. And that'll be a story that I'm afraid will make, you know, news that a lot of folks didn't have planned for. So this is a big storm. Like I said, inland effects way up to Georgia. The mountains are going to get flash flooding. We got tornadoes in the Carolinas. I mean, it's not just the landfall. This type of system affects so many people in different ways.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you coming on, and I know we're going to be checking in with you a little bit later as well as we continue our coverage. So please stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you a little bit later today. All right?
Yeah, I think I'm scheduled for around 6-ish. I don't remember, but that should be. It's going to be a lot rougher outside than it is now. We might play around with the camera angles and have my main camera point out so we can get some good real footage inside the storm.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm sure our viewers would appreciate that as you are out there in the thick of it. So again, stay safe. We'll see you later, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks to Mike there. And we did also want to jump back to our Tampa coverage that we've been jumping in and out of all day here between Orlando affiliates and Tampa. So let's head over there and listen in.
The entire flooding of downtown. Right now, the sheriff has enacted an evacuation of flood zone A. They want everybody out of there because once this storm starts, it is impossible to begin rescuing people.
Right now, if we had to go get somebody on a boat, I don't have any of my boats on this side of the county. I've got them out of harm's way because later today, we're going to see tropical storm force or worse winds right here in Crystal River and all along the U.S. Highway 19 corridor. So it's not safe for us to put our small craft out on the water to try and go out and rescue somebody.
Last year with Hurricane Idalia, Hunter Springs and Crystal River overflowed. The water overcame the banks of this river very quickly. It brought 3 to 4 feet of storm surge in. The fear this time is that there could be more than 10 feet of storm surge. In Crystal River, Evan Axelbank, Fox 13 News.
All right, Evan, thank you. A lot of people moved their cars to higher ground ahead of the storm to try and avoid debris and floodwater damage. But if you drive an electric vehicle, there are additional dangers. In fact, anything with a lithium-ion battery is a risk during a storm. That includes EVs, golf carts, e-bikes, even some scooters. Here's the warning earlier from Pinellas County Emergency Management Director Kathy Perkins.
If they get exposed to salt water, they can catch on fire. Move those items outside of the surge zone. Get it out of your garage, definitely, because if it catches on fire, now it's going to catch your house on fire.
Kathy Perkins says Pinellas County saw a lot of fires due to lithium-ion batteries following Hurricane Idalia last year. Well, stay right there. We are going to continue our hurricane coverage here on Fox 13 right after the break.
Okay, thank you to our Tampa team. Now let's just jump right on over back to Orlando as they are still in continuous coverage as well.
Around about 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. and in doing so at a forward speed of probably 20 to 25 miles per hour, plow right through the Tallahassee region. That's the state capital with a lot of trees. An area has not been tested by a major hurricane. Amazingly, by the way, has not been tested by a major hurricane in the city's over 200-year history. They've had a lot of skirmishes of near misses with major had several minor hurricanes or minimal hurricanes, but this is really going to test the trees and the infrastructure. There's going to be a lot of power outages, but it's such a big storm that, don't focus on this cone thinking that we're out of the woods, because unfortunately we're not. One of the biggest impacts we're going to have are tornadoes. You can see the eye of the hurricane on radar and a couple of very distinct bands of rain setting up. And it's along this band we got to watch out. Some storms in Osceola County will work northward and will have a potential to become tornado-bearing storms here between roughly 3:30 and about 7 o'clock. So we'll have to watch these very carefully. We've got Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Berggren, as well as TJ Springer on deck to take over the continuing coverage this afternoon. And that's a good thing, because as we head into 9:30, we could catch some of these bands of rain packing tropical storm force winds of over 60 miles per hour, bands which could last through midnight. As you go closer to the center of circulation here toward the Panhandle along the I-75 corridor, hurricane force wind gusts are possible. There's a hurricane warning in effect for western Marion County, including Denellen, and western Alachua County, including Micanopy. So yeah, it's going to be a big storm here. And you can see this visible satellite imagery as it's about 9 hours away from landfall, 230 miles to the south. We're going to be on the edge of it, but it's such a big storm where we're going to have the effects. And just to give you an idea, the winds right now, we're looking at gusts between 44 and 46 miles per hour from Bushnell to Winter Haven, about 30 miles per hour in Orlando, and 40 miles per hour in New Smyrna Beach. Got a tornado watch region wide through 8 p.m. that may be extended. Storm surge, the path of this could exceed 20 feet. And as far as the winds go, the orange is tropical storm force winds. The red is hurricane force winds. Hurricane force winds lapping up against the Gulf Coast with tropical storm force winds enveloping the state from roughly this afternoon straight through midnight. Conditions improving by tomorrow morning. This moving quickly up toward Atlanta, where there are hurricane warnings as far north as Macon, Georgia. As far as the rest of the day goes today, in red, we got for tornadoes. In yellow, we got to watch out for wind gusts, the timeline taking it through tonight. And in green, there is that ever-present chance for some flooding rain. Blue would be a storm surge risk. So these are all impacts that we're tracking, and we'll have the latest information right here on Fox 35. This is going to be a historic hurricane for this area, an area untested by major hurricanes. And this is certainly a force. We're going to talk about the hurricane history and the impacts in greater detail coming up. All right, that is the wrap on Major Hurricane Helene. And taking over right now will be TJ and Noah with the latest information. All right, John Brown.
35 News starts now, tracking the tropics.
All right, thanks a lot, Brooks. And you're watching Fox 35 special coverage as we track Hurricane Helene. We're monitoring the latest path, the satellite images, and cameras from all across the state of Florida, some of which are getting pretty rocky already. Thanks for joining us once again for our wall-to-wall coverage. I'm John Brown. I'll be with you all afternoon. And we're going to be here all day and into the night as we track this storm and the impacts all across Central Florida. Well, as you just heard, Helene is now a Category 3 hurricane, and it is expected to go even higher as it approaches the Panhandle and also the Big Bend area. So we're going to check in with our meteorologist here. We have TJ, and we got Brooks as well. They're joining us right now to talk about the storm track. So, Brooks, you were just talking about the impact here on Tallahassee. I was looking back at Mexico Beach. That area got hit, what? 2018.
That's right.
It's still a mess up there. So, this could have a long-time impact.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, John. You're absolutely right. And of interest, Tallahassee was pretty far east of that, so they only caught max wind gusts of like 50, 55 miles an hour. But this one will hit with much the same power. Of course, Michael was a big Cat 5.
Yeah.
It took years to recover, but unfortunately, we're probably going to see something not too dissimilar in many cases here in the Panhandle. TJ, we've been tracking the impacts. Let's get right to it. But first off, this has winds of 120 miles an hour as of 2:30. It was updated to be a major hurricane. As of 3 o'clock, here's a position fix. The latest, if you're tracking this at home, 26.9 north, 84.8 west, winds of 120 miles an hour. It's expected to make landfall in Tallahassee, in Appalachia Bay tonight around midnight. This is going to be a nighttime landfall. And because it'll have a forward speed of over 20 miles an hour, it's currently at 20 miles an hour, which is really fast, by the way, for a forward-moving hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. It will not have time to weaken, as often these do as they approach land because of the cooler shelf waters. It is going to roll in with the full force of a hurricane, and on the eastern side of the eye wall, which may impact just east of Tallahassee, they're going to have wind gusts that could exceed the sustained winds. So if, let's say hypothetically, it has sustained winds of 120 miles per hour at landfall, but it's moving north at 20 miles an hour, you'd have winds of 140 miles an hour relative to the ground speed. It's a very devastating impact in that zone. But the problem lay in that it's a matter of miles to make that call. Will it be Tallahassee? Will it be areas just east of Tallahassee? At this point in time, we'll tell, but it's a big storm with a big wind field. So regardless, there's going to be a lot of extensive wind damage, hurricane wind damage, and power outages, which could extend to several weeks in some communities there. We're also on tornado watch as the eye is visible on Tampa radar, providing up-to-the-date position fixes as well as intensity fixes. It's a lot easier to get that information now that we have radar viewing it. We got to watch out for spin-up tornadoes developing on a southeast flow. Spin-up tornadoes, which could develop between now and about 8 p.m. TJ Springer joining me now with the impacts as we're watching these bands move across the area in the next several hours.
You just mentioned the wind field, Brooks. How large of a scale, Helene, the footprint, so to speak, is bringing with its impacts.
Yeah, what are you seeing right now?
Yeah, so that's one thing that we've really been keeping tabs on is how large it is and the wind, how far it's extending away from the center of circulation with Helene, which is still well offshore. We can see the potential for these 40 storm force winds to extend possibly anywhere from 400 miles away from the center. So that's why we're all under these tropical storm warnings, not just for those that are closer to Helene's center, but all across the peninsula. We're dealing with that. Now, in terms of some of the wind gusts already that have been quite notable, Cocoa Beach saw 64 miles per hour just a little bit ago. Vero Beach nearing 60 miles per hour, and some lighter wind gusts from Cape Canaveral down through Daytona and Kissimmee right around 40 miles per hour. But still, if you have things lying around the yard, things that are prone to blowing around that you didn't put away, a gust of that magnitude will still blow that around, if not blow it away. So we've been hitting home on trying to get your necessary preparations done here soon before things get worse, certainly before taking a look at some of those wind gusts as we progress through the remainder of our Thursday afternoon and evening. We can see the gusts really starting to ramp up closer to 60 miles per hour by 9 p.m. This is closing in on that landfall time up to our north and west. Check out Cedar Key and Horseshoe Beach, closing in on 100 miles per hour. So it's not looking good, and this is going to be that time frame where things are likely the worst. As we start to head closer to midnight and beyond, we see these lightening up just a little bit. And by the time we wake up for breakfast time tomorrow and head through the day, things are certainly looking much better than how they will be later on tonight. So as we continue to track the tropics, we are monitoring, as Brooks was hitting on, that tornadic threat. We have the instability in the atmosphere. You don't want to see the sun on a day like today because that can just add fuel to the fire, so to speak. So we have that. We have what we call wind shear in the atmosphere, or that organizational wind in the outer bands of Helene. So between those factors, you can see the shades of oranges and reds. That's that greater tornadic threat as we head through the remainder of the evening. But look what happens as it goes to the north. We start to see all of those ingredients get lifted out of here and things improve quite nicely. But still, that's something we're going to have to contend with really from now all the way through the early part of the evening. That's why we have these tornado watches that are in play until 8 o'clock for all of us here, not just across Central Florida, but the entirety of the Sunshine State, just about. We haven't talked a ton about storm surge. I know that's not as big of a factor for us here across Central Florida, but up to our northwest, where Helene will be making landfall, it's just going to be devastation in terms of that storm surge, which could get up close to 20 feet in the Panhandle and the Big Bend. So that's something that we're going to continue to monitor closely as well. We've already seen so much flooding ongoing with videos online, on social media. So sending all the good vibes and prayers for everyone impacted there. Flood advisories for just about all of the state as well. Those go through Friday morning. Those flood watches, especially for the low-lying, flood-prone areas. But thankfully for many of us, the rain isn't going to be as big of a factor as some other hurricanes where they're not moving quite as quickly. That's the one plus in terms of at least this part of the storm. This factor or impact amounts a little bit less the farther south and east you live. But if you still get under a good downpour, that torrential rain is going to make things really dicey out there on the roadway. So certainly want to not be driving around later on this evening. If you do need to get some things done, I would say do it now rather than later as we head through the first half of the afternoon. We've already seen the wind picking up, as Brooks was just mentioning, and that's going to continue to do so as these scattered storms continue to develop with the bands circulating around Helene. The wind continues to increase closer to dinner time. Tornadoes are on the table. They are possible for sure. Then as we head through 6 to 10 o'clock, we're expecting that landfall, maybe even a touch later, but in that time frame, it's certainly when we're going to have the worst of Helene ongoing across Florida. So make sure you're staying with us, make sure you're staying informed, and make sure you have a plan. If you do need to get out, I think most of Central Florida, I'm sure we haven't seen too many things closing down. I think that's really up across our northwestern communities, up closer to the coast, the Gulf Coast, that is, where things have been a bit worse already. So I think if you need to run to the store, get some things, maybe you are worried about the power, you need to run a few errands, you should be A-OK to do so. But you certainly want to have that plan just in case things do get a little bit rough out there, Brooks. But I sadly think it's going to be a little bit worse before things get better.
Well, yeah, especially here, we're going to have the tornado threat developing. Yeah. And of course, as this makes landfall in about 9 hours, we're looking at a major hurricane landfall yet again here in Florida, this time on the Panhandle in Tallahassee. It's going to be a very difficult night for folks there in the Big Bend region. All right, that is the latest on Helene. John, back to you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. See you all in just a bit. Now, coastal Hernando County is going to get what they're calling a catastrophic storm surge. And as Fox 35's Aaron Messmer reports, they are already starting to see some flooding at this point.
Some families along the Hernando County coast are putting some last-minute touches on their preparations here. They're bagging up sandbags, finishing getting their homes ready for what will be some deteriorating conditions. Now, I want to show you what the water level looks like. I just talked with Hernando County Sheriff Al Nienhuis. He says this may not look so bad right now, but this is a concern because the water level, he says, didn't really recede following high tide late this morning. And he says this is going to be a big concern when the storm surge really starts to impact the area. And the word that emergency officials used today to describe that potential storm surge is catastrophic. This region is still predicted to be in the 8 to 12 foot range, which could be twice as much as the surge produced by Hurricane Idalia a year ago. And that storm caused some devastating flooding along the coast here in Hernando County. It pushed several feet of water into roads and homes. It took people weeks, maybe months to recover from that. We've already seen some water in the roadways in some of the low-lying areas along the coast. That was just after high tide this morning. While emergency managers are concerned the surge will last throughout the night and into Friday morning, Hernando County families are bracing for the worst.
The last hurricane we had, the last storm, they got pretty bad over here, and they were flooded. So hopefully everybody does evacuate.
Yeah, we need to cut away from that story because Orange County right now having a press conference. So let's listen in.
Later in the day, Mayor Jerry L. Demings is here to give an update on Orange County storm preps and how we are monitoring the situation. He'll be joined by our emergency manager, Chief Laura Lee Avery, a representative from Orange County Public Schools, and from two power companies, Duke Energy and OUC. Mayor Demings.
All right. Thank you, Jane. Good afternoon to all of you. We are here to give you an update. We're pretty fortunate at this time that we have fared relatively well in dealing with this storm, but it's not over. In fact, just about 45 minutes ago, we were on a conference call with the National Weather Service, and they said to us that really the most significant period of time related to this storm will continue until about 2 a.m. tonight, or in other words, early tomorrow morning. And as a result of that, what we're saying to our residents is you got to stay vigilant at this point. While we are fortunate that we're not having any direct impacts from Hurricane Helene, we do have some secondary potential impacts. Those are tornadoes. And so we want to get through that period of time. And we are still concerned, however, about the potential winds that could impact our community. In fact, the National Weather Service said that the forecast calls for sustained winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour. We're going to monitor that very closely because that is at 35 miles per hour, our links and some of our first responding units make a determination whether or not to continue responding or not. So up until about 2 a.m. Tonight, that remains a critical period of time for all of us in our response mode. Also, they've said to us that we potentially could see another 1 to 2 inches of rain fall during that period of time. In terms of our shelters do remain open. As As of about 2:30 today, we had 78 people in our general population shelters. In addition to the general population shelters, our shelters for people with special needs, they remain open. The good news is that not many people have gone to those shelters. We have approximately 10 people who are in the shelters for people with special needs. We intend to leave the shelters open until about 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. At that point, we will likely look to closing down the shelters unless something extraordinary happens overnight. The Lynx bus service is continuing. Fortunately, the winds have not picked up to a sustained level, so Lynx is able to continue operating. They are monitoring the wind speeds as we move forward. Yesterday, we ended up passing out a total of over 32,000 sandbags. So it really became obvious to us that there were people concerned about localized flooding here within this community because they took advantage of the sandbag distribution here within Orange County. There have been numerous neighborhoods, unfortunately, over this wet summer who have experienced localized flooding. Many of them are really concerned about this storm and the potential impact on their neighborhoods. Most, if not all at this point, have fared fairly well because of the precautions that our public works and our utilities have taken at this point. So we see minimal impact in utility companies. They're going to report in just a few moments. We want to ask our representative from Duke and the Orlando Utilities Commission to come forward, and they will give you some updates on their numbers before I call on them. You may recall that yesterday we said to you that today we would not be, for unincorporated Orange County, I want to be clear about that, we would not open our landfill or our transfer stations, and that we would not pick up the regular garbage or today. Those who did not have the regular pickup today, I just want to remind you that on Saturday, we will go back and we will pick up those who we missed today. Tomorrow, Friday, we will have our regular trash pickups in unincorporated Orange County. Our fire rescue department has continued to be at a high level of readiness, but I did want to report that we will be dispatching about 25 of our fire personnel to the Big Bend area to assist with the recovery efforts at an appropriate time. So our community will help those who will be in need as well. And at this point, I'm going to call on our energy personnel. We're going to start with Duke. Lisa Karan will come forward, and then we'll have Janice Osani from OUC. And after our energy representatives will speak, we're going to ask Mr. Scott Howard from the Orange County Public Schools to come forward, and then we'll have Division Chief Avery from the Office of Emergency Management. She'll come up and to give some wrap-up comments at the time. So with that, we'll go to our energy personnel at this time. All right.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. On behalf of the 4,000 employees across Duke Energy Florida, I'm here to report that we have minimal outages as of right now, and we're standing ready and prepared to restore power to your home and businesses as quickly and safely as possible. As I stated yesterday, we have 8,000 resources strategically placed throughout the state, 3,000 of them locally nearby in Ocala, ready to respond. And as the day progresses, we realize that the increased wind gusts will cause trees to fall, limbs to fall into our power lines, creating possible additional outages. These conditions are critical to our crews being able to restore power safely. As soon as the conditions are safe enough, we will be able to get out and start diligently restoring power. In addition, with the heavy rainfall, we ask residents and visitors of Orange County to stay away, as down power lines could be hidden underneath all of the debris. Consider all lines energized, as well as tree limbs and anything in contact with the lines. Remember, electricity and water do not mix. And please report all power line hazards to Duke Energy or 911. We're committed to keeping our customers informed about the status of restoration efforts, and we will continue to provide regular updates through duke-energy.com, on social media, and encourage our customers to download our mobile app and to report an outage, text OUT to 57801. That's OUT out to 57801. Lastly, I just want to echo what the mayor said, to be vigilant and considerate of this time as the storm is still passing. Safety is of the utmost importance to us at Duke Energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Janice Sosani with OUC, the reliable one. I'm here to let you know that OUC is prepared for Hurricane Helene's potential impact to our service area. So far, we also have minimal outages to our service territory. At the start of this conference, we had about 3 outages impacting about 250 customers. We'll be using our own line technicians, our own tree trimmers, and water techs to respond to any storm-related outages or issues within our service territory. Crews will work overnight as long as it is safe to do so. Additionally, we've enhanced our call outage support throughout the night. Once the storm passes through Central Florida, we'll work with our mutual aid partners to send line technicians to the Panhandle and Big Bend area. If needed, we'll also send water crews to assist. Rest assured that OUC prepares for storm season all year by strengthening our electric system, water infrastructure, and improving our outage management system. If you haven't already, please register at OUC for our outage alerts in English or Spanish by texting REG to 69682 to receive those outage updates straight to your phone. Customers can also visit OUC.com or call 407-423-9018 for additional information. Also, please make sure we have your most current contact information. The easiest way to do that is to visit my.ouc.com and log in. As always, and like everyone here, safety is very important to OUC for our customers, our employees, and our community. We're asking as well that you please stay away from down power lines. In addition to avoiding anything that's come in contact with the ground or trees, please stay away from pooled water. It can become energized and is very dangerous. Additionally, a down line that is sparking, smoking, or burning is extremely hazardous, and you should call 911 immediately. We ask our customers to keep in mind that it's imperative to keep your children and your pets monitored as well in case they're outside playing. Unfortunately, storms are also a time when scammers or cyber criminals will use natural disasters to pretend to be utility companies restoring power. They attempt to trick customers into providing personal and financial information. Please keep in mind that OUC will never ask you for payment information over the phone, by email, or by text. If you are contacted, hang up. And if someone comes to your home and you feel suspicious, and just when that happens, do not open the door, close it, call your utility, and report it immediately to law enforcement. OUC does not enter a home unless we have an appointment for something like a home energy audit, and our employees and crew will always have an ID to show to you. Finally, I want to caution customers to use generators safely and never run one in an enclosed area or indoors. Always place the generator at least 20 feet from your home and never in an attached garage. Never, ever, please plug in a generator to your home's outlets because it could re-energize power lines and hurt somebody working on those lines. More information and tips, especially safety tips, are available at ouc.com/storm center, including our outage map, which is updated frequently. Please stay safe. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Howard. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Orange County Public Schools. And on behalf of our Superintendent, Dr. Maria Vasquez, we want to provide a Hurricane Helene update and share some important information to our families and our employees and community. I want to emphasize that our students, their families, and our employees are always first and foremost on our minds when we make decisions. After consulting with our safety and emergency management team and based on the National Weather Service forecast indicating considerably reduced winds by 5 a.m., all schools will reopen tomorrow, Friday, September 27th, and we will resume regular operations.
We were just listening in there to Orange County as they are giving an update as we are nearing landfall for Helene. I also did want to give you this live look. This is Pinellas County. This live look right now, you can see that's a road and people are driving on it, and you can just see the water rushing up onto there. Definitely not a safe thing to do. And we did want to bring in the Lieutenant Governor of Florida, Jeanette Nunez, to talk a little bit about the safety and what the state is doing. Lieutenant Governor, when you see that image right there of those people driving on the water, that probably isn't making you too happy, right, as you're telling people to follow orders and evacuate.
No, and of course, we've been talking about this now nonstop, the governor and myself, about making sure you're following those local orders. I'm talking about that window of opportunity to evacuate and seek shelter closing as this storm, a major storm, continues to approach and intensify. So we want to make sure people understand that our number one priority is preserving life, making sure those individuals are safe, especially those that are in that direct impact area. But again, searching for refuge at this point, it's probably getting a little too late. We want people to be safe, and we've been talking about this. Local law enforcement has been knocking on doors, convincing all of those that are under those evacuation orders to leave. So make sure you hunker down, make sure you take the necessary precautions and stay safe.
Within the past hour or so here, Helene has become a Category 3 hurricane. What has the state been doing the past 24 hours or so to prepare? And does that major hurricane status now impact how you're preparing?
Yeah, well, under Governor DeSantis' leadership, we prepare obviously for the worst and we hope for the best. But with this storm, as we saw, it began as a tropical storm, then it became a Category 1. We weren't so much concerned about what the category levels will be because we continue to prepare and do all the necessary things regardless of what it ends up being. We have upwards of 30,000 linemen. We have upwards of 3,500 National Guardsmen. We have pre-positioned and staged assets and resources all across the state. We have our first responders, our urban search and rescuers. They're ready to go. Once the hurricane passes, the aftermath of the storm, that's when the difficult work begins. And we have all of those pieces in place. And Governor DeSantis is going to make sure that whatever needs any local community has post this storm, that we're going to be there for them every step of the way.
And we are taking a look at our XRAD radar as we can see how powerful this storm has becoming. Are you allocating more resources to certain parts of the state over others that may be more hard hit?
With our Division of Emergency Management, we're constantly getting requests from local government as to particular needs that they may have both pre and post storm. So we've been fulfilling those needs immediately as they come in. But right now, there is nothing that the state is lacking in terms of resources or personnel to be able to contend with a storm of this magnitude. And even in worst case scenario, if it continues to intensify and strengthen. So we have everything needed. Florida is prepared, and we're going to make sure address the needs as they come in immediately, but of course for the long term, because we recognize that this is going to be a significant impact, and our most important concern is preserving life, which is why we continue to tell folks to heed those local orders, make sure that they're doing the necessary things. Florida, again, no stranger to hurricanes. We have all of the necessary resources in place.
Let's talk after the storm. Power outages expected, cleanup efforts. What are you preparing for that?
Well, as I mentioned, we have an inordinate amount of linemen ready to begin that difficult work of restoring power. That becomes a big priority for residents all throughout the state of Florida. Again, debris removal. We have a number of crews ready to start clearing the roads. You need to make sure people have access to the roads. And then we'll also have to do a significant amount of messaging as it relates to keeping people safe after the storm. Of course, one of the largest fatalities from a post-storm issue is trees that are falling down, tree limbs and down power lines. And then again, people trying to drive through standing water. So of course, we want people to be safe after the storm as well. Generator usage, we continue to talk about that. But we want to make sure that people understand this is a real significant storm, life-altering, life-threatening. The storm surge upwards of 20 feet in some areas. The impact of wind, the significant winds right now, they're 120 mile per hour plus. So this is going to be a long haul, and we're going to have to work hand in hand with the local governments and all of the folks that are going to be involved in restoration from the power perspective, and then, of course, cleaning and the difficult task of rebuilding once all is said and done.
I did want to ask you something that Governor DeSantis said yesterday, that the building where the state's emergency response is organized is going to be tested during this. The governor did say there wasn't enough money during construction to ensure that the roof could withstand a hurricane this strong. And he said there are backup plans in place if there is an issue. Are you able to speak to us on what those backup plans may be?
Well, in terms of contingencies, we always have those in place regardless, because if you need to operate the Emergency Operations Center out of another county, I think they have allocated Escambia County as an alternate site. South Florida, obviously, there's a few counties outside of that emergency order. They'll still feel the impacts from a tropical storm weather conditions. But, we have all those plans in place, and so we'll continue to operate.
We need to make a decision. What does the data say? I'm not.
Why not use money? It shows you which projects are stuck.
Well, if people want to stay with the information, they can follow us on X at FLCERT. That's FLSERT. And then, of course, if they have specific information they want to find out about, they can go on our website at floridadisaster.org. Those are two places where they get up-to-date information. And our most important message is stay safe, follow local orders, and try to avoid going out during the storm. A lot of people like to do that, take pictures, and that's when you see a lot of the issues that fire after and during the storm.
All important things to know. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor, for joining us here.
Thank you.
Stay safe. All right, let's go away for a quick 2-minute break. From Fox, we'll be back in just 2 short minutes. Stay with us. We did also want to pop up this image for you. This is in Hillsborough Bay, which is the Tampa area. You can already see emergency crews out there right now as this camera is shaking, most likely due to that wind that is starting to pick up. And you can see the water there also starting to crash over that barrier onto the road where these cars are driving. And we also did want to show you this other image that we showed before the break, but this is just crazy to me. Look at that water going over onto the road where people are driving, going up past those barriers as this camera, again, really shaking. And that's in Pinellas County, which is to the western side of the state there. Tallahassee, where the storm is supposed to make landfall in just a matter of hours now. So these are some of those images that we are getting in. I also did just want to show this one as well. And again, you can just see that water and the shaking. So really, as we've been showing you these images over the past few hours or so, we can see how this storm is picking up. It is massive, and it's taking aim not just at Florida, but of other southern states, right? This is going to be impacting not just Florida, these other states here. North Carolina, emergency officials in the mountains in the western part of that state are warning that heavy rains before Hurricane Helene even arrives have set the stage for potentially historic flooding. Several rivers near Asheville, North Carolina are expected to rise more than they have in nearly a century. Local officials there are warning tens of thousands of residents about the potentially catastrophic and deadly consequences. 7 inches of rain already have fallen in Asheville, while some other areas have seen even more rainfall. The threat of flash flooding also remains as hurricane landfall is expected in Florida around 11 p.m. Eastern time tonight. We do want to go back to Fox 35 Orlando, as they have been in coverage all day here. Let's pop back over and see what the update is now.
150 sustained discussions. The Hurricane Center has said that significant intensification is possible, if not likely, all the way up to the point of landfall later this evening. So we're going to keep an eye on that. It certainly looks like the consensus of the modeling, at least right now, keeps the eye east Tallahassee. So if it landfalls here, obviously, that means a little more wind for our region than if it landfalls here. But yesterday, it looked like the eye may go west of Tallahassee, TJ, which, at least for our friends in the Big Bend and the Panhandle, the eye staying east of Tallahassee means the worst wind will stay east of the city
for
later
sure tonight. Shift might be impacting places more like Cedar Key and a little farther to the south and east, but that would also mean more impacts for us here across Central Florida. So that's what we're going to continue to fine tune. If it wobbles, all of these factors, really why it's a storm team alert day for us, a storm alert day across Central Florida. So if you are getting out, I would say do it sooner rather than later, because we're going to start seeing more tropical downpours, the potential for tornadoes going up, and the potential for more strong wind gusts, tropical storm force gusts going up as well. We've already seen some of that today through the last 3 to 6 hours or so. Gusts beyond 60 miles per hour on Cocoa Beach, beyond 40 in Daytona and Cape Canaveral, Florida, and Kissimmee. You can see the gusts continuing to ramp up closer to 9. Look at Cedar Key, look at Horseshoe Beach, around 100 mile per hour hurricane force wind gusts just in time for this late evening as Helene is bearing down on the Big Bend and the Panhandle. So we're going to continue on all of this, get you new updates as we progress throughout the rest of the evening to keep you ahead of all this, John. But certainly we have a ways to go before things improve.
Yeah, that's for sure. Long evening ahead. Thank you, TJ. Appreciate it. And our team coverage continues right now. Fox 35's Marie Edinger takes us to the Wildwood area up in Sumter County.
I'm in the Woodlane Meadow subdivision in Wildwood. This is an area that flooded during Hurricane Debbie, even though neighbors had never seen that happen here in the past. This time around, the city of Wildwood is prepared. The Public Works Department brought out this pump. You can see it goes out into this right here. It is disconnected. We did see some city workers out here earlier seeming to struggle with that pump. I reached out to the city trying to learn more, but even still, it was still running earlier. And that's something that people living in this community said is giving them a lot more sense of security.
Here, I went up to City Hall, spoke to the mayor and the engineers up there, and they assured us that they would have something in place to take care of something else happening. So I feel a little more comfortable. I do got sandbags ready though. I'm prepped. I'm ready. I got my generator. I got sandbags, water. So we're ready to go.
Do you think you would have taken it as seriously if it had not flooded here?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have. I mean, I've always had my whole home generator. It's just a habit we always have. But after seeing the water get here, I was like, okay, it's time to tighten up and make sure I'm ready for the next serious storm that comes in.
Yeah, I would have to think if it's getting that close, you're just like watching it, hoping.
Yeah. Literally, it was just coming up like inches by the hour. So it was kind of scary.
How long have you lived out here?
I've been here for years.
Okay. And when was the construction put in?
Less than a year ago, they opened up. I think they've been open about 4 months now. Okay. Yeah.
So was it like you could see a semi-immediate effect, like it started?
Immediately after they were up and running, and we had Debbie, that's when it started. As long as I lived here, we had small storms come there, but the ravines never actually filled up at all.
The city told me the pump is precautionary. They aren't anticipating there will be a need for it. They just want to be 100% sure. And as we mentioned, just give a little bit more sense of calm to the people living around here. So the city explained there is new construction, and that new construction came along with a stormwater pond. The commercial development's pond had an issue. It just didn't work as intended during the last hurricane, and it overflowed. That overflowing sent water across the road and filled up the pond that you see right here. So the city says it's been in close cooperation with the engineers of that new construction, and that the engineers have now remedied things. So the city came in today, pumped down the Wood Lane Meadows pond just in case, but they are saying that they're expecting things to go smoothly.
It's concerning, I did contact my attorney just in case, because I wasn't required to have flood insurance at this location, even though I was this close to the ravine. So just get prepared, for the case something happens.
The city also told me the public works director is driving around town, just checking on whatever might need tending to in the meantime to make sure people in this community stay safe during this storm. In Wildwood, Marie Edinger, Fox 35 News.
Well, after Hurricane Helene is gone out of Florida, its next target, of course, is Georgia. That could be a big issue right now, especially as it's gearing towards Atlanta. The storm is still expected to pack a serious punch when it gets there. And Fox 35's Oliviana Calmes is live in Valdosta this afternoon. That, by the way, Valdosta just across the Florida border, right there along I-75. So, Oliviana, that's where a lot of people are going to get out of Florida, but they may be driving right into the eye of the storm again.
John, right. People are evacuating this area. So if you're evacuating Florida, I would go definitely farther away, because people here are definitely bracing for the impact. They expect winds up to 100 miles per hour here. It's calm right now, as you can see behind me. The trees aren't moving yet. It's not pouring rain at this point. And so people are getting in last minute preparations. The local county EMA here telling people to start sheltering in place, though. And a lot of folks have already evacuated this region.
It's so large that I don't know. And they're saying it's worse than Idalia. And when I heard that, I was like, Idalia was pretty rough. So we had a lot of trees down and a lot of water in our house with Idalia. So I'm like, I don't want to stay with my baby.
Now, she talked about trees there. People I've spoken to today say the wind is going to be the really big story here in the city, because there are so many trees that can do so much damage in just a small amount of time. And we'll be watching for power outages as well. So people getting their generators out, getting prepared for this. And overnight, of course, we're going to see the worst of this coming up into Georgia. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Oliviana. We will talk to you later on this evening. And you're watching Fox 35's special coverage of Hurricane Helene. It's currently in the Gulf, now Category 3, possibly on the way up to a Category 4. We'll have much more straight ahead.
Again, thank you to our Fox 35 Orlando team as we do continue our coverage of Helene, as this storm is starting to get really, really close now. And we could see on those cameras, I'll just pop one up for you again really quickly here. Just look at that water rushing over the side, and you can see the camera shaking, and people are still driving, but officials have said to not do that, right? Because there is a lot of water starting to come over the side, as you can see. And I did also just want to pop up one more shot before we go to our break here. Another look. These are all shots out of Florida on the West Coast, and you can see just water coming over the side of that barrier there too. It is starting to get pretty dark out there, so we are going to have these live images. We keep looking to see what new ones we can give you, but we are going to go away for a quick 2-minute break on Live Now from Fox. When we come back, more live coverage of Helene. Stay with us.
Daddy, they say.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Thanks for being with us. My name is Christy Matino. You a live look right now. This is Hillsborough Bay in Tampa, and you can see some police cars starting to head out there as you see that water starting to pick up. And we did want to also talk to Stephanie Zick, who's an assistant professor of meteorology at Virginia Tech University, to just talk a little bit more about what it means now that Helene is a Category 3 storm. We did want to bring her in. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox to break this all down for us.
Okay, I'm happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so that question of now this is a Category 3 storm, major hurricane. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, the category is important because it tells the peak sustained winds. So now the peak sustained winds are at 120 miles per hour, and that can be very important, especially near the landfall location. That said, it was already a very large storm with a large wind field. So the impacts are not going to change that much with this upgrade to Category 3. The message is still the same of like a broad area of storm surge across the Florida coastline, especially in the Big Bend region, and a lot of rain. The wind hazard is going to be the most important right near the landfall location.
And what are the ingredients, so to speak, to make a storm this powerful, to upgrade it to these 120 mile per hour winds? What is causing that?
Yeah, I mean, the main factors for thinking about a tropical cyclone and how it forms are like a hurricane. Sorry, tropical cyclone is the generic term for any ocean basin. The main ingredients are warm ocean waters. So those help to fuel the storm. And then additionally, these storms need to form in relatively weak wind environments. So sort of like the winds surrounding the storm need to be pretty constant with height and not too strong. So that's that vertical wind shear that you sometimes hear. Vertical wind shear needs to be typically pretty low. That allows these systems to form as like these vertically stacked vortices. So as long as there is warm ocean water and low vertical wind shear, these storms can intensify.
This is set to cause a life-threatening storm surge flooding, but can you explain exactly what a storm surge is?
So storm surge, it's mainly related to this difference between like onshore flow and offshore flow. In the onshore flow, you get a rising of the waters as the storm moves towards the coast. Onshore flow is bringing the water towards the coastline. And in the offshore flow, actually, on the other side, you can lower water values. So that's the main reason for a storm surge. There is a small amount that's due to the lower pressures associated with the storm, but that also helps to explain why the storm surge tends to be largest on the right side of the storm where the onshore winds are and the onshore flow.
And we have been talking a lot about Florida, but from your perspective, can you just tell us a little bit about how this can be so far-reaching to these other states, the impacts.
The impacts are going to be felt well inland. First, this is a Category 3 storm that's moving very quickly. So, the hurricane force winds are going to be felt inland locations. Additionally, these storms drop a lot of rain, and inland flooding is a major concern in a lot of these storms. They can dump so much rain, and that it continues inland. In particular, with this storm, there's going to be enhancement of rain over the southern Appalachians. So inland locations across southern Appalachia, sort of like northern Georgia, far western North Carolina, those regions are going to see a lot of rain, over 10 inches, and then they've already been getting rain for the last 1 to 2 days. So I am particularly concerned about the inland flooding hazard with this storm due to the large amounts of rain in the southern Appalachian region.
From your perspective, how dangerous is this storm going to be? We keep hearing that this is going to be historic, catastrophic. These are some of the words getting thrown around here. Can you tell us what you think? Is this true? I mean, should we be bracing here for?
Well, the National Hurricane Center is using very extreme language, and in particular, that's with the storm surge. So we're going to be seeing historic storm surges along the Big Bend coast of Florida. They're forecasting 15 to 20 feet of storm surge. So that in some locations will be record breaking. And these are locations impacted by Debbie. With this storm surge, it's going to be an even larger storm surge. So that's why they're really encouraging people to evacuate and to follow those mandatory evacuation orders. So the storm surge is definitely going to be historic. And then additionally, like I said, with the inland flooding, I think it's going to be a very impactful storm across the southern Appalachians.
From a meteorology perspective, we touched on this a little bit, but the science behind how a hurricane even forms, can you just walk us through how this all begins and all the way up to landfall, right? Like, what is the process that goes on there?
Oh, okay, yeah. So these storms, like I said, they tend to form in the tropics over these warm ocean waters in low vertical wind shear. They need to be able to sustain convection near the center. So convection is these like thunderstorms that form. So there needs to be like a moist environment, and the air needs to be able to rise. One of the key ingredients to formation is actually some sort of seed. So an initial circulation. Often in the Atlantic Ocean, that's an African easterly wave. So a lot of times we see in the Atlantic Ocean that these waves move off the coast of Africa, and some of those can form into hurricanes. This particular storm had a different seed. So this was formed from like this large low pressure system across Central America, where a small area started to see some lower pressures. And then over time, it formed. So those are some of the ingredients.
That's very fascinating. See, I had no idea, and I probably should know that, but now I know. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. We appreciate your perspective.
All right, stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. You too. All right, we are going to go away for a quick 2 minutes. My name's Christy Mattino. Thanks for being here for our coverage, and it will continue in just 2 short minutes.
And welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. So we continue to track Hurricane Helene for you as it has intensified into a Category 3 storm. So now into that major storm category. Hi, everyone. Mike Beige here. Thanks so much for joining us on Live Now. I'll be with you for the next 3 hours. We'll be bringing you live feeds from all over Florida. When we have officials at a podium, we'll bring it to you live, raw, and always direct right here. We'll also be checking in some of our stations, Fox 35 in Orlando, Fox 13 in Tampa. We'll be breaking down some updates with reporters on the scene throughout Florida and in Georgia. And we'll also be talking to a storm chaser out in Florida that is near Tallahassee right now, as really all of Florida gearing up for these hurricane force winds that are going to be in their area. Let's go again to the major tracking system right here that we have for you. And again, just showcasing the Category 3 storm that has intensified within the last, as it continues on a path that will bring the monster storm into Florida's Big Bend region with a potentially unsurvivable 20-foot storm surge, catastrophic hurricane force winds, and flooding rain later on tonight and even into tomorrow morning there. So we are tracking a lot for you here on Live Now from Fox, and we'll really continue to do so. What we want to some of the coverage right now, Fox 13 in Tampa. They have a reporter there talking, so we got a lot to bring you here on Live Now from Fox.
These communities, they haven't seen a lot of activity, and he says that is a good sign. That's what they want to see. Hopefully people have heeded the warnings and evacuated, because he says that water is absolutely going to be in these neighborhoods. And that water is actually a concern to Sheriff Nienhuis. He says it doesn't appear like it receded very much following the high tide late this morning. He's worried that that's going to really complicate matters when we see that storm surge. The word the county's emergency management director used this morning when discussing that potential storm surge is catastrophic. The region is still predicted to be in that 8 to 12 foot range, which could be twice as much as the surge that we saw during Hurricane Idalia a year ago. And that storm caused devastating flooding along the coast in Hernando County. Meanwhile, some homeowners spent the day today filling sandbags, doing some final preparations for their homes as the storm approached. Meanwhile, we spoke with Sheriff Nienhuis a little bit ago.
Unfortunately, no matter how good we get at predicting these storms, it's never perfect, and you always want to err on the side of caution. And like I always say, it would be so much better being inland, wishing you were on the beach, than be on the beach with water rising and wishing you had evacuated inland. So it's always better to be safe than sorry.
The National Guard sent members into Hernando County. They're positioning themselves to be able to respond, and emergency crews are also getting their high water rescue vehicles in place, but they're urging people to not put themselves in a position to need to be rescued. They say there's still time to evacuate. Zones A, B, and west of US 19, as we've been saying now for a couple of days, are in that evacuation zone. We're told there's still time to get out, get to higher ground, and get to a safe place. In Hernando County, Aaron Mesmer, Fox 13 News.
Hey, Aaron, thanks. Chris and Linda are now on deck as we continue our hurricane coverage right after this. Stay with us.
All right, and that was Fox 13 in Tampa. We'll continue to track with them throughout the evening as well. Do want to, again, show you our XRAD system right now as we are bringing all the updates to you here on Live Now from Fox and our viewers, and we'll be updating you throughout the afternoon and into the evening, and also into the overnight hours as well. The National Hurricane Center says that because of Hurricane Helene's massive size, there is a significant risk of a life-threatening storm surge along the entire west coast of the Florida Peninsula, as well as Florida's Big Bend region. So that is really the area that they are focusing in on. And I just want to show our map right here and just zoom in just the different cone system that we are seeing here. And again, you are seeing the track. The storm has slowed some, and now it looks like could be making landfall sometime this the evening hours there in Florida. So we'll be keeping a heavy track on this for you right here. But you can see, as I'll just zoom out for everyone, just to kind of show just the massive strength and size here of this see the outer bands right now, it looks like all of Florida will be inundated with some sort of Helene presence, from wind to rain. And then what we really worry about, though, is, of course, the storm surge in some areas of Big Bend. So we'll be keeping an eye on that for you here on Live Now from Fox, as always. And again, I'm your host, Mike Page. We'll be with you here for the next several hours coverage as it is all unfolding throughout Florida. We're hoping for the very best for all of the residents out there, and continue to stay safe. And remember to check in on your loved ones if they are in the path here of this massive hurricane. Let's go out now to Fox 35 in Orlando. They are having coverage as well right here on Live Now.
35 News.
Fox 35 News starts now, tracking the tropics.
You are watching Fox 35 special coverage as we track Hurricane Helene. We are monitoring the path of the storm, but we want to get right to Seminole County, where they're holding an update from emergency management. Let's listen in.
Information staff. We are monitoring, of course, the progression of now Category 3 Helene, Hurricane Helene. While we are outside of the cone, the first response agencies as well as public works agencies to be able to respond quickly and efficiently to this emergency. So that's why we're here activated in the EOC. We also have our citizens information hotline open for anyone that may have questions during the event, 407-665-0000. We ask that our residents stay safe. Of course, as we get into the evening hours, we're going to see some tropical storm force winds here in Seminole County. Some of those, of course, could be sustained winds. So please, if you don't have to, stay at home, stay off the roadways, allow our first responders to respond efficiently to any emergencies that they need to respond to. We have been in contact with Florida Power and Light and Duke Energy. While they're not here in the EOC today, we have asked them to be, of course, on call for us. There's lots of line crews here in the county that are ready to respond, and they have responded. We've had about 3,000 customers roughly that have lost power during the event so far, but most of those have been restored almost immediately. So we continue to, as we identify power outage throughout the community, those power companies, which are also staging to go to the Panhandle, they're responding very quickly here in the county to restore our power. And we're going to continue to do that. They'll continue to do that as long as it's safe to do so. Obviously, if there's strong tropical storm force in getting the linemen out there to fix that. Remember, if, though, you do come up on an intersection where the power is out, please treat that as a four-way stop. We have seen a lot of injuries and unfortunately some fatalities in our previous hurricanes when individuals barreled through an intersection that was without power. So, again, if you come up on an intersection and there's no power there at the intersection, please treat that as a four-way stop. Earlier today, a transformer blew as one of these squall lines came through. A transformer blew down in the Altamont Springwood area, and that triggered the railroad arms to go down at State Road 436, Ronald Reagan. State Road 434, North Street, Plamosa Street. That caused a major road issue in the Altamont Springs and Longwood area. They're still recovering from some of that congestion, so we are asking people, if you can avoid those areas right now, allow the railroad crews and the power company to do their thing and get those arms up. They are putting those arms up manually, and they're opening up those roadways. Our hope is that we have no major damage here in Seminole County, but with that in mind, we are planning to reopen Seminole County tomorrow. Seminole County Public Schools and our 7 cities, as well as county government, does plan to open tomorrow. So that, again, is barring any type of emergency or deep impact as these squall lines come through. But right now, the plan is to respond to anything that does happen overnight and to reopen everything tomorrow. If you experience damage inside of your home, we ask that you can call our non-emergency line. Obviously, if it's an emergency, call 911. But if it's not an emergency, just to report the damage, if you could call our Emergency Operations Center, 407-665-1010. Again, 407-665 I'm sorry, 5100 407 665 5100 .org, and click the damage assessment report button there. If you lose power overnight or in the evening and you plan to use a generator, please practice generator safety. Carbon monoxide calls are often the leading cause of injuries and death after a hurricane. So if you are planning to use a generator, please make sure that generator is at least 20 feet away. Local a possibility. We've already seen localized flooding over just the last few weeks with the normal rain showers. Not a lot of capacity. We've been saying over the last few days, not a lot of capacity for additional water, and we are getting additional water as these squall lines come through. So please be careful driving around. Turn around, don't drown, and be careful as you drive through there. Our sheriff's office and our fire department out the evening and into the morning hours as this hurricane gets closer to us. Meanwhile, they are also prepared. Office has a 32 deputy crew that is planning to go force, which is made up of Seminole County, Orlando, Orange County firefighters, professionally trained in the urban search and rescue to get into homes that are damaged and destroyed and save lives. They are preparing to mobilize to go up into the Panhandle as well as this storm moves forward. So we want just everyone to please be careful throughout the evening as as it gets darker. These winds are so we just ask that you be safe during that time period. We will be here in the Emergency Operations Center and our first response agencies ready to respond to any type of emergency. So that's it for here in the Emergency Operations Center here in Seminole County. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
So, Alan, is there a specific mile per hour wind that will affect emergency response for 911 for either police or fire?
Yeah, so we're continually monitoring. So anytime there's a hurricane event, we monitor the wind gauges that we have, and most of those are attached to our fire stations. So we can see exactly unsafe for certain vehicles to drive. So 50 mile an hour. And we've even responded to calls in the Bearcats. Those are the armored vehicles that even during a hurricane. So if they're
nearly all of that power has restored. They are planning back to normal tomorrow. That means schools will reopen for our kids if the damage is minimum here in our area, which is expected. Thank you so much for joining us for our special coverage of Hurricane Helene. I'm Luann Sorrell, and we want to get right over to our Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Bergeron and TJ Springer. Good afternoon, gentlemen. What is the latest on Helene?
Luann, it looks like it's rapidly intensifying, and TJ, the forecast remains on track.
Yeah, I mean, that's one good thing. I feel like we've been talking about this for now a week plus, and we've seen these little wobbles that you've been talking about, we've all been talking about, but thankfully it seems like right now everything is going according to plan, so to speak.
Yeah, so let's dive right into the radar, show you what's going on currently. It's now 4:09 coming up p.m. We're seeing some outer bands. Look, I know a lot of you might be wondering, it's hardly rained all day. Where's the storm? This was expected. We talked about this last night, and it continues to shift later. The core of the weather here in Central Florida is going to be tonight. It really doesn't get really going until 7 or 8. Now, we're watching these thunder showers heat up the atmosphere. So any of these cells we're going to watch over the next 2-3 hours as they parallel up the eastern side of the peninsula for any tornado warnings. Currently, there are a few of those that do have some rotation, not enough to prompt a tornado warning right now, but we're keeping an eye on those. That's the view from Daytona Beach, where it's 86, and it is blowing pretty good, the wind. We're still expecting this modeling. Some of the modeling takes the eye west. I don't think the eye is going west of the city. If anything, it'll be over or just east of the city, in my opinion. We're going to watch that over the next couple. They're kind of small, but here's the super high resolution visible satellite with the track. And notice this is the predicted track, and there's the eye. There's been some discussion online about wobbles. The short of it is wobbles are normal in big, strong hurricanes. Sometimes wobbles can lead to a trend. This one is still more or less on the path. The center is a little bit east of expected right now, but not tremendously so. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make a big difference, but it does make a big difference in the landfall point, which determines how much surge there is. Here you can see the visible satellite. We've got these outer bands here over Florida. There will be more bands that comes into central Florida later this evening. You can see in the eye, I slowed down the super. You can see all of those bands starting to really take shape around the eye. This is a 3D enhanced version of that satellite currently. All right, so when do the strongest winds come into 8 o'clock? It's when they start getting there. So we're still about 4 or 5 hours away from the winds getting to where they will apex for the night. And then 10 p.m. once we get to the I-95 corridor. In terms of the peak gusts, we've seen some already, non-thunderstorm winds 50 to 60. But if you're in the orange, still think we'll see about a 4 to 8 hour wind, 45 plus Brevard. And then when you get Ocala, the Villages, 75 plus, and then western Alachua County up towards Perry, Florida, certainly over 100 miles an hour. So TJ, that's the latest. It looks like the wind peaks this evening, the storms peak this evening, and
we're now less than 10 hours away from here, trying to keep you all ahead of what is the storm alert day for all the things that Noah was just talking about. Heavy rain, pours, and the gusts. We'll talk a little more about that coming up, but for now I do want to talk a little bit about the tornado threat, because we do have that risk today. We have this slight risk or a likely chance of severe weather all across the peninsula, and that's the tornadic potential. So as we continue to track Helene, track the tropics, we can see these shades of reds and oranges, pinks. That's the energy in the atmosphere combined with what we call the wind shear, or that spinning or twisting of the wind as you head up into the sky. So as Helene lifts northward, that all gets taken away for our rotating thunderstorms. After, if another warning does get issued, we've had a couple get issued today across counties, and have that tornado watch for all of us and really all of Florida just about, which is just a staggering statistic to me. It seems so many counties under tornado alerts. This watch in effect until 8 p.m. tonight, and again includes all of central Florida. But the wind, that's the other big concern that we've been talking about as we continue to see Helene close up on the Big Bend and the Panhandle. Here locally could easily get to 55, 60 miles per hour across central Florida, going much worse for our WOGX viewers, our friends across our northwestern drastically as we head into our day tomorrow.
That sounds good. Yeah, TJ, I was driving in about an hour ago, and it really seems like the winds are starting to pick up right now.
Yeah. I really think through the morning thus far to about lunchtime, we've felt that, and even more so now.
That's right. All right, TJ, we'll check in with you in just a little bit here. No matter where you live here in Central Florida, you
that was just some of the coverage of Fox 35 in Orlando. We'll continue to check on them throughout the afternoon and evening as well. We are going to take our first break hour. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments on Live Now from Fox.
Sam.
From Fox, I'm your host, continue to bring you the very latest with Hurricane Helene. I do want to show you this. Take a look at this. Very shaky right now, and you see we already have water there on that roadway. So we'll continue to look at other different shots throughout the massive Category 3 right now heading towards Tel.
to pile the water up along our coastline. Here's the in the update. Winds of 120, 145 miles west-southwest of Tampa. No change at any change to how close the center line is to Tallahassee. For now, it's still pretty close. And then the hurricane ends up over North Georgia, Tennessee, and weakens dramatically. Of the areas of rain are showing some rotation. We'll talk about that in a sec. Peak surge values 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., 15 to 20 feet up in the Big Bend, 10 to 15 across our northern counties, 8 to 12 and past than that. But still, 5 to 8 feet of water is a big, big deal. 4 to 7 areas south. Let's get to Sky Tower. We were back at this radar, and definitely some cells off the coastline, Nash, that are rotating. Could have some tornado warnings pretty soon.
Absolutely, especially with the 25 miles kind of west of Sarasota, drifting to the northeast. There's the center of that system, but it's these outer little bands of this storm that we're watching very carefully. Those little pockets of red that could capture some spin as they push on shore, and that's what we're going to be watching for the potential for a tornado threat. Right now, south of St. Pete, more heavy rain moving north, and that's going to pack some gusty winds as well, and that's going to provide pretty much the highest rain totals that we see out of this. These are just now starting. To pick up and continue over the next few hours. In terms of spin, though, it's the showers and thunderstorms we've been watching just off the shore of Pensacola. And you can really start to see our radar picking up on some of that rotation, although thankfully
our thanks there to Fox 13 in Tampa. We'll continue to check on them throughout the evening as well. But as you can see right now, our radar system, as it gets closer, major category 3 a storm right now as it continues its sights on Florida's Big Bend region. Nearly all of Florida is under this massive weather alert, and warnings are extending hundreds of miles. Oliviana Calmes, she is in southern Georgia and joining us here right now. And Oliviana, tell us the conditions.
Mike, I'm here in Valdosta, Georgia, and where we are expecting winds up to even 100 miles per hour coming all the way from Florida up into this area. Right now, it's calm. You can see those trees behind me are still in place, but people here are bracing for the worst. And while it's been calm, people have been getting those last-minute essentials from the storm, but a lot of folks.
It's so large that I don't know. And they're saying it's worth.
We'll continue to take you out to Fox 13 in Tampa, Fox 35. If it gets to the podium, we'll bring it to you here. A Category 3 storm. We are expecting the next major National Hurricane Center update coming up in about 40 minutes as well. And before we go to that break, do want to show you again the strong winds that are pushing through right now in Lee County. This is Sanibel Toll Plaza camera showcasing a live perspective for us there in Florida. So all our thoughts with everybody right now in Lee County, Florida as well. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. More to come on Live Now from Fox. Paige, thanks again for being with us here in our special ongoing coverage of Hurricane Helene. We continue to track it with you all in real time. We'll be giving you the latest news conferences and briefings when they become available. We know at the top of the hour we will have Florida. It continues to strengthen there in the Gulf, and really all of the West Coast is under these severe
phones going off. Hello, everybody. So here we go. 427. Thanks for sticking with us here. A reminder about tropical tornadoes. They form fast. They're very short for an hour on the ground. This is not a tornado outbreak in Kansas, so it's possible we never even see debris show up. So first and foremost, there's a warning now till 4:45 for Volusia County. So if you're in the Sanford area or Lake Manford, Lake Mary, Heathrow, you're not clear off the little query there. So let's zoom this in. Now this is heading into probably the east end of Deltona, and we're talking this rotation is going to be 3 behind me, or links 1 behind me at the green screen. I've got that pulled up. You can see that the times here. So to land right about maybe 4:42 to 4:45, northeast part of Deltona, that is where we're concerned about the potential for a tornado in the next few minutes, TJ.
And yeah, and you know, that's the one thing, Noah, we haven't seen a lot of this area touched with precipitation, and that's what you were just product. We're going to continue to see this lift into somewhat uncapped area, which is where we're going to have that instability as we progress through the next few hours or so. So right now, this is an in-house product that we're looking at. You can see that little area of green. I'm going to zoom in. So that's just to the east of Deltona, and that's showing a little bit of rotation. It's kind of broad. If you're just joining us, a tornado warning for until 4:45, rather, for north central portions of Volusia County. I'm going to put back on our storm relative velocity. And remember, the green going toward the radar site, the reds that you're seeing going away from the radar site. And to me, at least right now, this isn't a super organized couplet as what we call in the weather world, or where the greens and reds are touching. It is broad, but no, it's something we're going to continue to watch closely as this lifts into a somewhat untouched area from precipitation, really since around lunchtime.
Right, TJ. And we've got this tornado watch that goes through the evening. Hurricane is moving due northeast right now, heading for somewhere east of Tallahassee in the Big Bend. Through the next several hours, we've got this big, what we call feeder band here from just off Fort Lauderdale to Hutchinson Island over Brevard County, Orange, Seminole, and then up to Flagler counties. 45 for but these tropical tornadoes, they spin up fast, they touch down fast, and they can often do damage before we see them on the radar. So I'm going to put a track on this. The actual rotation is northwest at 45, and I'm going to zoom into the cone and show you who needs to be concerned about this. So right, we see that red and green sin, and if you're within the cone here, that is where the potential tornado is. So see this little cone here? If you're within this, that's where we need to be. Innermost room, closet, until we tell you it's safe to do so. So notice over here, north to land, you're outside of the cone I drew. So yes, north to land, you're in a tornado warning, but the actual rotation, any moment. I don't know if we have a traffic camera right there, but I'm at Daytona Park Estates, Big John Road.
And let's go out to Tampa right now. That is where we find, what's it like in your area right now?
As hurricanes spawn the tornado. So they're looking at that one in the Orlando area. The weather's going downhill pretty rapidly here in the Tampa Bay area. We just had a gust in Sarasota of 67 miles an hour, a gust in. And the thing about hurricanes is a lot of people think of it as a wind event, but really water kills for storm surge numbers, Mike. This is unprecedented in many of these areas. Imagine a 20-foot storm surge. Imagine an 8-foot storm surge. I'm about 6 feet tall. It would be well over my head. If you don't evacuate, we're going to tell you you have to leave your home. But when things get bad, we can't help you. We can't come and get you. We have to close the bridges. We're not going to send our deputies. We're not going to send our ambulances, fire trucks out. So if you choose not to evacuate, you're kind of on your own, Mike. So it's a dangerous situation we're looking at here. Of course, we'll be...
Oh.
just